Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day 519, 519, 519er. August the 13th, 2018, Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Real quick before I get to today's news, just a couple of items here. I'm in the process right now where I work. We're installing a brand new barcode reader system, which as you can imagine is a big fat Charlie Foxtrot. And yours truly is in charge of getting this system implemented. And as you can imagine, it's fraught with all sorts of issues. So as a result, I'm working like 7 days a week, 10, 11 hours a day. And so for that reason, I've had a couple days this week where I have not been able to respond to the comments. Now, it takes me about an hour to an hour and a half typically to respond to all the comments that I get from each video. I do try to do that as much as I possibly can, but sometimes there'll be a day or two where I'm just too busy. I don't have time to respond to all the comments, but I do scroll down and read them all. So keep making comments. I do appreciate that. I do read them. I cannot always find the time to respond to all of them, but I'll certainly continue to try and do my best. But just so you know, why if I didn't respond to a couple of your comments this past week for 2 days, that was the reason why. I'm just simply overwhelmed with work and not very much time. Barely have time to do the research and get the videos done. So just bear with me as I get through this next couple of weeks trying to get this stuff taken care of. A couple people have asked about my speakers. Yeah, my Cerwin-Vega D5E digital. The very first year I think they went digital was Cerwin-Vega, 1984 or 1985. I picked these up in Germany in 1984. I got the two big ones, and then I got the two smaller Cerwin-Vegas, which I actually picked these up back in the early 90s from a guy who collects vintage stereo gear. And I got these two. They all sound incredible, as you can imagine. Now, these things here, I've done these 2 times before. You know, replacing the foam rubber surrounds that wear out, and break away and break apart. I did it myself the last 2 times, but it's so time consuming and so tedious that I don't have time to do it, so I just pay someone else to do it. So anyway, yes, I'm redoing my 4 woofers. First I dropped off the 2 big ones, and then when I pick them up, I'll drop off the 2 from these size. So this is what I have in my main, little like party living room area, kind of like second living room. Actually, it's like I don't know if it's a living room, but it's because there's a larger room. But this is kind of like my TV room, which I don't actually watch TV, but this is my music room. It's where I play guitar and listen to music, and me and my girlfriend and my friends hang out or whatever. We crank the music. It's really loud and clean and clear. It's awesome. And then I have actually 2 little JBL speakers that I run into my bedroom. One in my bedroom, one in my kitchen. So my whole house, when I turn my stereo, my whole house is filled with loud rock and roll, baby. That's right. I can rock the house, literally. So that's the deal going on there. Thanks so much for asking. So anything else? I think that's about it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the TowerGate news of the day. Of course, it is Monday, and that's the day when I'm on schedule that we like to reveal the dumbass of the week. So my good friend Peter in the Great Northwest, holding down the fort there in the Great Northwest in the liberal Mecca. He's holding down the fort out there. He loves the dumbass of the week, and so do we. So here you go, Peter. I think you're going to hopefully agree with this week's pick for dumbass of the week. She's quickly becoming almost a regular winner. I mean, she's competing now with Mad Max for the most dumbass of the week awards. But you just can't help it because she's just incredible. And I mean that. You know how I mean that, right? She's really is incredible. Okay, so I'm talking about, of course, Ocasio. Marty Feldman-Eye's Cortez. She did 2 things this week which solidified her position as the top vote getter for Dumbass of the Week this week. And okay, so the first thing that she did is we had, of course, what's his name, Ben Shapiro challenge her to a debate, and then she tried to turn it into a sexist, try to accuse him of being a sexist or whatever because she's too big of a coward, too big of a scaredy cat to debate Ben Shapiro. And she's absolutely right. She should never, ever get into a debate with Ben Shapiro, and I think we all understand that. But the thing that's amazing, again, I think she actually might be dumber than Pelosi or Mad Max. And that's almost impossible to believe that you could find someone in American politics who would be dumber than Mad Max or Pelosi. But I really believe that Ocasio-Cortez is quickly establishing herself as possibly even dumber than Mad Max or Piglosi. So after being made to look stupid with the absolute worst response she could have given to Ben Shapiro, she should have done more. She should have just ignored it. That's what she should have done. She definitely doesn't want to respond. She should have just ignored it and said nothing. But the fact that she responded, what she did is turn it into a real issue now. So now it's out there. And now you have all these conservative women who want to debate Ocasio-Cortez. And they would all wipe the floor with her as well. So now she's got herself in a real tough pickle because she can't really back out of it without looking like a total scaredy cat. And so what she should have done if she had any brains was just ignored the comment. But she didn't. She responded. So now she's taken it to the next level. And now she can't use, the same thing she used against Shapiro. She can't use that against Katie Pavlich or Candace Owens or anyone else because they're females as well. So she's gotten herself into a real pickle. And we'll have to see. I think she's too stupid to get out of it. She's just going to have to admit she's too incompetent to engage in a debate with these intelligent people, and that's probably what's going to happen. But she even got it. This is how dumb she is. She was out at a rally in Hawaii. She was there to show her support and to campaign for a Democratic communist in Hawaii. So she goes up to the podium and she gives her, Ocasio-Cortez Democratic communist speech, promoting all the crazy things she's talking about, her $40 trillion healthcare plan and everything else. And then in doing all this, she completely forgets to introduce the person she's there to endorse. Her whole purpose of being there was to provide an endorsement and to introduce this Democratic communist running in Hawaii. And so she goes up there and gives her speech, and then she walks off stage, everybody clapping for her. She walks off stage and completely forgets that she was supposed to introduce and announce the person she went there to campaign for, who's standing there on the sideline looking like, so what do I do now? She was supposed to introduce me. How awkward, huh? Man, you have to be extra stupid to forget when you go all the way to Hawaii to give an endorsement and be told, yeah, go up there and give a nice endorsement and then introduce so-and-so. And then completely forget to endorse the person you're there to endorse. That's unbelievable. That's just unbelievable. I don't even think that Mad Max or Madame Pelosi would have bumbled that. I mean, that's beyond the pale. So anyway, based on that, these two things, I have to say solidly, without any question whatsoever, that Ocasio, with the Marty Feldman eyes, Cortez, has got to be, absolutely hands down, our dumbass of the week. Spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. She's unbelievable. Uh-oh. The number 2 man at the Democratic National Committee, Minnesota Congressman, Democratic commie, Congress critter, Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison is now facing domestic abuse allegations, and the victim and her sons have the evidence. The lefties are being hung with their own petard. Remember, they started all of this. They started Me Too. And he was one of the guys out there with a part of the Me Too movement. All these lefties who were all out there on the Me Too movement, so many of these guys are being taken down for their abuse of women. And it's almost always on the left. They're all being exposed. It's just absolutely extraordinary. I've never seen incompetence at this level by a political party in my life. I don't think he's going to survive this, my friends. I really don't. Because her sons and she have the texts. So once she tried to make it go away. She just wanted him to go away and just end the relationship and go away. But he did not want to go away. So even a year after the relationship ended, he's still trying to get back into good graces. He's becoming abusive and all this type of stuff. Now, as it turns out, she also is a Democratic communist, big-time environmentalist leader in Minnesota, and I guess that's how they got together. But anyhow, it looks very, very bad. Now, she has responded, and he has responded and denied the charges. But she has come back and I guess basically said, yeah, well, we can prove it. So anyway, it looks like big time trouble for Keith Ellison. Not that he needed any, because he's already in trouble for his anti-Semitic stuff that he's been engaged in. So Keith Ellison has got a lot of problems, along with Cortez and Pelosi and the whole damn 9 yards. I mean, what an incompetent, horribly corrupt party. That just, this party is going the way of the Whigs, man. I don't know if it can be saved. Unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it in my life. Keith, your days may be done. Just like, what's his name from Minnesota? What was his name? The comedian? Al, what's his name? Forget his name now. Al Franken, yeah. He's headed in the same direction as Al Franken. Franken, of course, now talking about running again. These guys, man, unbelievable. Now, did any of you see the Trump tweets on Saturday evening? Brutal, absolutely brutal tweets, man. So, he's never stopped tweeting about Spygate and everything that was done during the 2016 election. He's been hammering Sessions. He's been hammering the FBI, the DOJ. But he really took it to a new level on these tweets on Saturday evening. And I think there was 8 of them. I'm sure most of you have seen them. I didn't write them all down to recant them for you. You can see them if you want. It's not hard to find them. They're everywhere. So anyhow, the long and short of it is that he went after Sessions big time. Said Sessions was scared and was hiding. He says he was also threatening the FBI and the DOJ for withholding documents from the Congress. And he warned them. He warned them not to destroy anything. And he says that he may have to get involved. He went after Rodenstein. He went after Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr. He's really... Again, as I said, Trump's not going to let this go. He's holding the card. He knows he's holding all the cards. He can drop this anytime he wants. He knows what's going on, and he's just waiting for the right time. And we don't know when that right time is. Maybe he thinks it's before the midterms. Maybe he thinks it's after the midterms. I would not be surprised if the Republicans and Trump do very well in the midterms, and they really do exceedingly well, he'll come out of the midterms with a ton of political capital, and he might use most of it to get rid of Sessions and Rodenstein, and then dare any Republicans in the Senate to keep him from nominating a replacement. They would be under incredible pressure if they fought Trump on that and tried to deny him a new appointee for Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General. But this is what I see happening, friends. I really think he's headed. I do think he's headed. And believe me, for those of you who think that these people are going to walk and they're not going to get away with it, no. These people are going down. I'm telling you. Lots of people, I'm thinking 2-3 dozen people at least, are going to jail. High-profile people. Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, the whole group. Yates, particularly Sally Yates. Remember, silly Sally Yates signed off on the first FISA warrant. The first FISA warrant. And all the ones after that were signed off on based on everything that Silly Sally had put together to get the first warrant. She's the one that they're all going to point the fingers at and say, well, it's all going to come back to her because Rodenstein and all the rest are saying, hey, well, this was just, the FISA warrant was already there. This was just to, continue it for another 3 months. All those continuations of the FISA warrant, the 3 were all based on, and they're all relying on and falling back on the first Title I FISA warrant, and that was Silly Sally. Silly Sally was also responsible for a warrant on a FISA warrant on Flynn. She has, we believe that there were national security letters, possibly written by Peter's been stroking us to get additional surveillance. This is all going to come out, my friends. It's all going to come out. Trump's going to make sure it all comes out. And if they hold the House, There'll be nothing to stop the investigators. And at that point, people will know that the jig is up. The jig will be up, and then you will start to see movement. You will start to see people who will say, okay, damn, we didn't win the House. The Republicans are still in control. The committees are still doing their investigation. I guess it's just a matter of time before, I'm going to be called up, in my head on the chopping block. And at which point people are going to start getting real nervous. They're going to start talking to their lawyers. And their lawyers are going to start saying, well, the best thing you can do is get out ahead of this thing. The best thing you can do is go in and become a witness and try to get immunity or try to get reduced sentence or whatever. These people know they're going down, and that includes the rotten Reverend Clinton. All going down. Unbelievable, though, those tweets. I mean, these were hard-hitting tweets. Trump's not playing around. Believe me, he's not going to let him get away with it. These people, many of these people, are going to prison. You cannot have this. I mean, the bottom line is, Devin Nunes has established that there was no intelligence to launch the investigation against Trump. None. Then James Comey went under oath and basically said under oath that the reason they launched the investigation into Trump was the Papadopoulos meeting with Downer. But we now know that Papadopoulos didn't say anything to Downer about the Russians having damaging information, or as far as they didn't say anything about having emails, Hillary's emails. What Papadopoulos claims that to Downer, what he claims is essentially the Russians had a dossier on the Rotten Reverend because they had picked up phone conversations and communications when she was in Russia and Europe, and that they had a dossier on Clinton. That's essentially what happened there. He never said anything about emails. So, in other words, they have lied about the reason that they launched the investigation into Trump. They lied about it. They've been caught red-handed lying about it. The whole group of them, which includes Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Yates, Lynch, and it leads all the way back to the Rotten Reverend and Obama and Brennan. I think they were the three heads, really. Brennan, Obama, and the Rotten Reverend were probably the three hierarchy that were directing and orchestrating everything that was happening. I think we're going to get there. Unbelievable as we see this thing moving in the right direction now. And Trump is dead serious. He's not letting him off the hook, and neither am I. We now have black leaders in Chicago, in Chi-Town, begging Trump to save them. They're begging Trump to save them. Well, let's see how you vote, Chicago. That's what I would say. If I were Trump, I'd say, good. I'd be more than happy to help you, but right now, nobody likes me in Chicago. Why don't you show me some love, Chicago? Let's see how you vote in November, Chicago. If you vote the right way in November, Chicago, I'll come help you out. Otherwise, pound sand. Uh-oh. Truth Feed has now picked up on the True Pundit story that we covered about a week ago regarding Senator Magoo, who we now know was the traitor that brokered the clandestine and illegal deal where he fed classified intel to Confusion GPS and Christopher Steele as part of the frame-up. We know that he gave names of problematic Russians to Steele and Confusion GPS. That's what Magoo did, and he was given those names by people in FBI counterintelligence. Counterintelligence, and probably Brennan as well, told Magoo, here's a list of problematic Russians. He passed the list on to Confusion GPS. It made its way to Christopher Steele, and voila, the next thing you know, these several of the people on that list of problematic Russians ended up in the Trump Tower meeting. And we know about the fact that Veselnitskaya found her way into McCain's office and took a picture from there, and then an organization that she's associated with got a donation from the McCain Foundation. Now, do you think that they'll cover this in the mainstream corporate media? Do you think even Fox News will report anything that's bad about Senator Magoo? I think it will be crickets. They're terrified to say anything negative about Senator Magoo because, he's got a brain tumor. Or maybe he's got a brain tumor. Maybe it's all an act. For all we know, hell, we don't know with these people. But so this just exposes more about Senator Magoo, and of course what we know, of course, one of the other people that was on that list was Mr. Akhmechan, who many of you believe is our guy. And Mr. Akhmechan, of course, was at the conference there, as well as being in the Tower meeting. He was also in Halifax, where he says that he can't remember if he spoke to McCain or not. He said he may have said hello, but he can't remember. The Gateway Pundit is reporting that Nellie Orr is a commie. You think so? Nellie is a commie sympathizer and is more connected to Russia than Trump could ever be. Now, this is being reported in the Gateway Pundit, but the original story actually appeared in the American Spectator. The American Spectator. And I believe it was George Newmayer who wrote the story. So, we learn that Nellie, of course, we know she speaks and writes fluent Russian. She has a romantic love affair with Russia and communism. She was a Russian history major at Vassar College. And guess who her instructor was in her Russian history class? Dun 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 dun. Figured it out yet? Edward Baumgartner. Ha ha ha! Oh boy! Edward Baumgartner, which we now know is the guy that had the little shop there in London, who's very, very closely associated with Christopher Steele, who we now know was the guy who was getting the Russian dirt, supposedly the Russian dirt, from Russia and giving it to Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele wasn't talking to these Russians. He was talking to Mr. Baumgartner. And Mr. Baumgartner was telling Christopher Steele he was getting this stuff from Russia because he's also a commie Russia lover. And Russia's not even a communist country anymore. They haven't been since 1989. Putin's not a communist. He's a capitalist. He's an authoritarian capitalist, but he's a capitalist, basically. So it turns out, and you just know that Edward Baumgartner was he was giving the stuff to Steele. Nellie Orr was feeding the stuff to Steele. But now we know that Baumgartner and Nellie Orr were not just two people around Steele feeding him information that were independent. We can now see that because they obviously have known each other for a very long time, that they could very well have been coordinating. Maybe that's why Nellie had a ham radio. So Nellie Orr did her thesis, which speaks glowingly on the, it was like a 450-page thesis, which speaks glowingly of the communist system, and she defends Stalin as a hero who tried to save his country from right-wingers. Now, Nellie will be getting a Chairman Mao pantsuit, just like the Rotten Reverend. Maybe she and Silly Sally Yates and the Rotten Reverend can share a cell. These female commies are up to their eyeballs in kimchi. Absolutely. Unbelievable what we're learning here. Not that Nellie was a commie. We already knew Nellie was a commie. Her husband's obviously a commie. But it just shows her hardcore motivation. Again, just like Steele, hardcore motivation. All these people's hardcore motivation. Strzok, Page, we know from their texts. Just imagine if we could see the text from Orr and what we need to now see. Excuse me. We now need to see the communications between Nellie Orr and Mr. Baumgartner. And Mr. Baumgartner needs to come and do some splaining. She needs to do some splaining, Ricky. That's right. We have Ricky Ricardo in the comment section every day. Ricky, do you agree that Nellie and Baumgartner need to do some splaining? Well, you know, the last 2 days, I've been talking about this Our Guy thing. The comment that Steele made 2 references to Our Guy when sending email messages to Bruce Orr. And a lot of people have commented on what they think, whether it was Akhmechan or whether it was somebody else. You know, of course, I think it may have been Assange. I've said Papagalopoulos is probably also a very good, very close second. And so a lot of people are still trying to figure out who this is. Eventually we're going to learn. Hopefully we'll learn after they interview Bruce Orr on the 28th. I certainly hope they ask him that question, and he certainly should answer who they're referring to about our guy. So I don't want to spend too much time on it because I've already spent probably more than we needed to. But it's just kind of one of them things. There wasn't a lot going on, and it was kind of interesting to dial down on both Assange and Deripaska to see, because that seems to be the two leading candidates. Akhmechan's got a lot of people think it's him. Papadopoulos now is rising. His stock is rising in this thing. And a lot of good people. Again, I didn't get time to respond to some of the comments the last 2 days because of my work thing going on. But a lot of people obviously doing a lot of research. Very good work being done in the comment section right now. And everybody trying to figure out who this may be. And it could very well be that it's someone that we haven't heard of, or maybe someone we have heard of, but not someone that we thought was really in the mix as much as we think. But I'm still kind of sticking with Assange, but I stumbled across another text which may shed a little more light, or possibly might make this thing even more confusing. So I'm about to throw you a serious curveball, okay? This is a high-hanging curveball on the outside corner that breaks about 3 feet and then drops to its knees. That's exactly what kind of curveball I'm about to throw you, so prepare yourself for another curve in the Our Guy mystery. Peter's been stroking us. Peter has been stroking us for a very long time. But I stroked up this text that he sent out, 2 texts specifically. The first one I want to deal with is a text he sent in March of 2016. Remember, March of 2016. This is a critical time period for all the things that were beginning to happen in London. This is where Peter's been stroking us, and Halper and Misfid and all these people are coming together over in London. So in March of 2016, Peter's been stroking us says, quote, "Our guy is talking. Our guy is talking." So apparently, Peter's been stroking us is aware of our guy. Now, could this be the same our guy that Steele's talking about, or is this just a term that they use in FBI counterintelligence or DOJ or Christopher Steele? Is this just a term that these spooks use, our guy? Our guy? Are they talking about the same our guy, or would it be a different our guy? Well, let's see if we can figure out what our guy that Papadopoulos may be talking, or that Strzok may be talking about. Remember, time, March 2016. Go look at my timeline and see what was happening within 2 weeks before and after March 2016. I think you'll get your eyes will be wide open. That's what I did, and I was surprised at what I found. So this text in March of 2016 by Peter's been stroking us saying our guy is talking is 2 days after Papadopoulos meets Mifsud in Italy, and 1 week after Papadopoulos learns that he is going to be joining the Trump campaign. And of course, he was brought into the Trump campaign by Ed Cox. That's right, the son-in-law of Richard Nixon, married Nixon's daughter. He is the head of the GOP in New York, and probably establishment. Probably not a big Trump fan, would be my guess. Why would an anti-Trump guy, Mr. Ed Cox, make the moves necessary to get Carter Page and Papadopoulos into the Trump campaign? And both of these guys, Page and Papadopoulos, joined the Trump campaign just 1 week after Peter's been stroking us says our guy is talking. Our guy. If it's Papadopoulos, is he suggesting that Papadopoulos is an FBI plant working for them as part of the frame-up? Or is he talking about Mr. Mifsud being their guy, who's now in place where he needs to be to lure Papadopoulos in? So let's look at another text from Peter's been stroking us that we've talked about a lot before, but now let's put it into context with this. This text, of course, we all remember, was December the 28th of 2015. This is the text where Peter's been stroking. It says, "You got all our Oconus lures approved." Oconus lures meaning foreign agents, agents working overseas, spies working overseas. He's asking Lisa Page if she got all our Oconus lures approved. And you notice he doesn't say our Oconus lure. He says, have you got all our Oconus lures? He's talking about plural, and he's talking about all. Now, all would suggest more than two. If he had two, he would say, did you get both our Oconus lures approved? He doesn't say both. He says, did you get all of our foreign spies approved? He's saying that December 28th of 2015. Then, within 4 to 6 weeks of that of each other, Misfit, about a month after this text, joins the London Center for International Law. And then with 4 weeks of that, Papagalopoulos joins the London Center for International Law after he is lured over to the UK by Mr. Halper with an offer to write a paper and be paid quite well. So what 3 or more could we be talking about? He's talking about multiple Oconus lures, multiple overseas spies. Well, we can assume possibly Misfit. We can assume at this point Mr. Halper. Is it possible that Papagalopoulos isn't so innocent and he wasn't just set up and used? Maybe he was one of the plotters. He has not yet been sentenced. His sentencing hearing got pushed back. Last time I saw a photo of him, right after all this went down, he didn't act like a guy who was afraid he was going to be going to jail, because the last photo I saw after he was indicted and giving a sentencing date, which has now been pushed back 2 or 3 times, he had a huge smile on his face as he's standing next to his bride, who worked for Mr. Misfit for 6-7 years. That's how they met. She worked for Misfit, and therefore she came into contact with Papagalopoulos. Now they're married. We haven't gotten the full truth about Papagalopoulos here. For the longest time, I've been believing he was just a dupe who got set up. But man, when I look at the dozens and dozens of times that he sent them emails about having meetings set up with Trump and Russia and Putin and Trump and all these things, it's just time after time after time he keeps sending these emails to campaign officials, going out of the chain of command, and they just keep ignoring him, but he just keeps sending the messages. He's meeting with all these people. He's at the right place at the right time. There's something. We still don't have the truth about Papagalopoulos. We don't know. But, last time I saw him, he was happy as a clam. He's standing next to his bride. And I don't know about you, but if I had just been drugged through the deal with Mueller, and I'd been charged and forced to plead guilty, and I was waiting for my sentencing date, I don't know that I would be smiling ear to ear, going off to Italy to marry my girlfriend, and then apparently Papagalopoulos seems to be doing pretty well financially for someone who apparently doesn't have much of a job these days. Maybe he was given a big fat chunk of change and told to lay low and keep your mouth shut, which is what he's been doing. He's the only one who's not really come out himself. He's got his wife out there trying to defend him, but she might be a spy too. She might have been recruited by Misfit. She was working for Misfit as a secretary. That's how she met Papagalopoulos. This whole thing stinks. This whole thing smells like a dead animal. It really does, man. We're going to get to the bottom of this. It's going to take some time. It's going to be like, it's going to be very difficult. Let's put it that way. It's going to be very difficult because the deep state's going to fight and scratch every way they can. But Trump, along with the committees in Congress, assuming we hold on to the Congress, after the midterms, I'm predicting this thing is going to pick up major speed, and we're going to expose these perps and all these sons of bitches. They're going to jail, including you, Mr. Papagalopoulos, if you are a part of this, you punk. And there's something going on with this dude. He's either so extraordinarily naive that it's almost unbelievable you could be that naive to be played the way he was played. You'd have to be stupid. So, we're going to wait and see where we end. But here's just another wrinkle into the Our Guy. What do you think? Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow. You guys have a good night. Goodbye.